So that's the Keir Starmer Labour leader and the new MP for Blackpool South, Chris Webb, alongside Angela Rayner there, of course. Let's talk to former Tory Cabinet Minister Nadine Dorries and Dame Margaret Hodge, former Labour Minister. Nadine Dorries, are we listening to the next Prime Minister?
Well, very possibly. And I think this particular by-election in Blackpool South is too close to a general election for anyone to say this is just, mid-term blues or it's an anomaly or any of the usual excuses that could be made at the time of a by-election loss. I mean, it is normal for the governing party to lose by-elections mid-term, but, we could be weeks or months away from a general election. I think possibly the repeated number of by-election losses and the fact that we're getting so close to a general election probably shows us which way the dial is moving.
Do you think your party will try and replace your leader, the current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, before the general election?
Well, that depends on what happens later on today. So I think the tipping point are the mayoral elections. I think it's already been factored in, and the messaging has certainly been managing expectations in terms of the council losses. If we were to lose West Midlands mayoral election and we lost Ben Houchen in North Teesside, that would be a very serious and difficult moment for Rishi Sunak. But I think my former colleagues, if they did try to remove Rishi Sunak, it would be madness because it would make no difference whatsoever, and it would actually send the message that we are just not trusted with government, because I think that would be our fifth Prime Minister in a term. So it would be insane to do that. What Rishi needs to do is, he has a cabinet full of people that nobody actually know or recognise or know who they are. I think he needs to get the people around him, those who are coming on your programme in the mornings, those who are out doing the messaging. I think he needs familiar, trusted, well-established faces around him. Nadeem Sahari ran the vaccine programme, rollout programme superbly. Excellent former cabinet minister. Where is he? He's on the back benches. He has the wrong people in his cabinet. People will say, doesn't matter who's in cabinet, that makes no difference. Those people in cabinet are the people who go out and do the messaging with you, and that's what he needs to do.
Margaret Hodge, I remember in the run-up to the election in 1997, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were very worried that the Conservatives might change their leader. Their big worry was that Ken Clarke would step in and take over from John Major. If you were Keir Starmer right now, you'd rather fight the election against Rishi Sunak, wouldn't you? You wouldn't want,
you wouldn't want
Boris Johnson to come back.
I would want
Angela Rayner's told us that last week.
Actually, I would want Boris Johnson because I think the British public are completely fed up. This is Boris Johnson. I know he's a friend of yours, Nadine, and I agree with a lot of what you said this morning. But
it's a friend of yours, but that doesn't make any difference to the argument.
I think the one thing is Boris Johnson, who spent years and years lying when people were dying. I don't think there's anybody in Britain
I completely, fundamentally, point to one lie. It's absolutely untrue, Margaret. You're just propagating that spin that's out there.
Would a change of leader help the Conservatives? Would it be bad for Keir Starmer?
I think that the change of leader now by the Conservatives would be completely and utterly bonkers. And actually, if you see what Rishi Sunak is doing at the moment, he's just talking to the bubble. So even when he takes initiatives on looking again at the benefit rates, or it's all about squaring off people in the Conservative Party. It's nothing about talking to the voters out there. And if he were to do it again, fifth Prime Minister, never got a Democratic mandate, I think it would be completely, utterly bonkers. I do think the election will be late in the year, because you can't have turkeys voting for Christmas. And I just want to say one other thing, Ed, because it's been going on all night. I am old enough to remember the elections that in the run-up to 1997, when every time we had local elections, it was always said, well, let's have a look at what happens to Westminster and Wandsworth. If the Tories win that, then Labour's not doing quite as well as we think. It's exactly the same with what's happening in the West Midlands and in Tyneside. Those are two very specific elections. The Tories might well win them. We'll wait and see. They're both too close to call. But to say that what happens there tells you anything about what people are feeling in the rest of the country is complete and utter nonsense, a silly bit of spin that gets us nowhere.
OK, I want to ask ITV News election analyst Professor Colin Rallings what he makes of what we've seen so far. Are we, do you think, based on the results of voting yesterday, looking this morning at the next Prime Minister being Sir Keir Starmer?
Based on the by-election results, the parliamentary by-election results, I think, certainly, and actually Sir Keir underplayed himself. There have been 5 swings of greater than 20% from Conservative to Labour in the last year, since we were sat here after the local elections in 2023, losing those seats, including Nadine Dorries' former seat, of course. The local elections are not quite so gung-ho for Labour. You always have to look at local elections in a more nuanced sense. There are clearly problems in Lancashire, which you'll see a bit more of today, I think, perhaps in Pendle and Burnley, where Labour councillors have resigned and some of them are standing as independents against their party.
And that's the
over Gaza issue. Yes, exactly, and Oldham. But it's not only there. I mean, later today we'll also find out from some of the places that Labour needs to win, what I call the Tony Blair-era Labour seats that Ed will know so well. Nuneaton, of course, and then Hastings on the south coast, where Amber Rudd, former Home Secretary, used to have her seat. Now, even in Hastings, Labour's had some problems with defections from within its own ranks, partly over Gaza and partly, this might you call the spin-off from the Momentum era as well. So at that level, Labour's not completely comfortable.
Nadine, can I ask, how uncomfortable are reform going to make the general election for the Conservatives?
Oh, incredibly so. I mean, the reform are actually going to facilitate and deliver probably a whopping majority for the Labour Party, and they won't win a single MP themselves. So, but you know, this comes down actually to the more.
And you're not tempted in any way yourself to lean in a reform direction?
So this is interesting, isn't it? Because you're asking me a policy question, actually, and I think the reason why we won so big in 2019, why Boris Johnson won so huge, was he had that ability to straddle the entire political spectrum from net zero, animal welfare, levelling up, and all the way over to Rwanda and low tax cuts, which Rishi Sunak opposed. What Rishi Sunak has done is he's abandoned all those policies. Reform have picked up the right, but you can't win on the right or left, as Jeremy Corbyn said.
Thank you all very much.
You could vote for reform?